It's Nolan. Now, before we get started, make sure y'all hitting that like button. Make sure y'all sharing it on your respective platforms. Let somebody know what we're doing today. Now, let's get into the show.
I gotta make $1 million in this lifetime. Letting my light shine, shine a light on the world. I gotta get this paper for the day, 'cause I don't know no other way. I don't got no time to play. I never asked to be the richest, I just need my dough. My people lean on me to get it, that's for shit show. I gotta make $1 million in this lifetime. I let my light shine.
They tryna say it ain't about the money. So who gon' pay me in this next recession? I'm talking generational wealth, fuck your possessions. I'm asking questions where the world is confused. The life my teachers taught me ain't the one I seen on the news. My niggas bleeding on the concrete, hemorrhaging on Wall Street. Taking acting classes for years and ain't seen a call sheet. Pushing 40, never got drafted and playing overseas. 30K a year after taxes plus they medical fees. You niggas tripping, bitch, I need this bread. I'm talking legal money, compound interest, some shit to get ahead. These youngins trapping, but the fiends working with the feds. Same nigga that you served, they gon' put your ass to bed. And now they telling me that AI gon' replace us. But who gon' touch your soul and hit them stages? These artists been signing them deals for ages. While they training y'all replacements, all of a sudden now the indies feel adjacent. Dog, I'm planning my vacation.
What's going on, beautiful people? It's the kid J Nolan here. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Industry, your number one source for music, entertainment, commentary, and breakdowns. Hope everybody's doing well out there this evening. The song on the intro is called In This Lifetime, featuring Zaylee and Eli I Am. Both of them are on the hook. Zaylee is the primary singer, and Eli I Am is the one who says, "My Omi says, shine your light on the world." So, song is from the Family Over Fame album. If you enjoy it, go get your copy of the album, man. Hit the Tune Goody link. I got it pinned in the comments. Check it out. Support your boy. So, new information has broken concerning Drake. Now, just a couple days ago, about a day or so ago, I saw an update saying that Drake was about to sell a 50% stake in OVO to Authentic Brands Group. Okay. That was the headline that came out a couple days ago. And I saw a lot of his fans that were celebrating the move. They felt like this was a mogul move. They felt like this was a power move, right? I find that to be very interesting because selling 50% of OVO is a power move, but I could have swore a couple years ago when Jay-Z sold a stake of Tidal, people said, "Oh my God, what was this? He sold the people out. What was the investment for? He left the company." He didn't leave the company. He got a board position with Square, who bought the company. But, you know, whatever. Or bought into the company. But nonetheless, you know, it's funny how one person's move can be looked upon one way, and then when another person does the exact same thing, it gets looked upon in another, you know? Um, and of course, Authentic Brands Group, they're the company behind, I believe, Reebok, the Marilyn Monroe life rights, and a bunch of life rights for a bunch of celebrities. Shaq is down with the group. I think he got a board position with the company. Uh, they're behind a lot of different corporations, et cetera, et cetera. Starter, all these different companies, you know, which is obviously an opportunity for him to cash out. Perhaps that's what he meant on Iceman when he said bees on the table. They don't have a price tag as to what Authentic Brands Group is going to put in his pocket or pony up, as he says on on his album. But, you know, that was saluted, right? However, new information has broken today that Drake and OVO are allegedly in debt by $4.6 million to an investment group who actually put over $6 million in their pockets just a few years ago, and they have been delinquent on the repayment. They've been trying to get their bread, and just a few days ago, they had to file a civil suit to try to get this thing handled. Okay? Business Wire came out not only broke the story, but they also put the paperwork out there so that we could see exactly what is going on. So this was filed in Supreme Court of British Columbia, Vancouver. Vancouver, interesting. Ain't that where Rick Ross got attacked? And Drake was doing the National Happy Canada Day or some shit and saluting all that shit. Funny how things come back around. So the plaintiff here is ARI OVO Growth Capital LLC versus October's very own ULC. That's the defendant. Notice of civil claim. This action has been started by the plaintiff for the relief set out in Part 2 below. If you intend to respond to this action, you or your lawyer must A, file a response to civil claim in Form 2 in the above named registry of this court within the time for response to civil claim described below, and B, serve a copy of the filed response to civil claim on the plaintiff. If you intend to make a counterclaim, you or your lawyer must A, file a response to civil claim in Form 2 and a counterclaim in Form 3 in the above named registry of this court within the time for response to civil claim described below, and B, serve a copy of the filed response to civil claim and counterclaim on the plaintiff and on any new parties named in the counterclaim. Judgment may be pronounced against you if you fail to file the response to civil claim within the time for response to civil claim described below. So basically, if you do not respond to this civil claim, you will be in default, which means you're going to have to pay without even having an opportunity to defend yourself. So make sure that you respond. Time for response to civil claim. A response to the civil claim must be filed and served on the plaintiff if you were served with the notice of civil claim anywhere in Canada within 21 days after that service. If you were served with the notice of civil claim anywhere in the U.S. within 35 days of that service. If you were served with the notice of civil claim anywhere else within 49 days after that service, or if the time for response to civil claim has been set by order of the court within that frame. So he could have anywhere between 21 to 49 days, or they, being that this is Drake and OVO, they will have 21 to 49 days depending on where the service was issued, okay? Or where they received it. So then we get into the claims of the plaintiff and the statement of facts. So they say ARI OVO Growth Capital I LLC brings its claim to recover amounts owing by October's very own ULC under a convertible note purchase agreement and 5 convertible promissory notes issued by OVO to ARI, collectively the notes. Okay, so they got some promissory notes. Hey, what's going on? Between July 14th, 2025 and August 5th, 2025, OVO issued 5 convertible promissory notes to ARI in the aggregate principal amount of $5,234,121.93. The notes were 5-year convertible debt instruments containing, among other things, conversion rights, information rights, prepayment restrictions, default remedies, and a contractual make-whole fee designed to provide ARI with a minimum negotiated return and to protect ARI against the loss of the benefit of its bargain if the notes were repaid or otherwise terminated before maturity. Okay? So they were basically giving notice that they intended to pay. OVO subsequently defaulted under the notes by failing to make required payments when due and by breaching other obligations under the governing financing documents. Now, what I find to be very interesting about this here is that man just put this album out a few weeks ago talking about I just want to see him struggle to make the phone payments. I just want to see him struggle to pay his bills. And here we are just a few weeks later with an investment company saying you and your label and your company are struggling to make the payments. I didn't make this up. This is not J Nolan's typing. I don't know how to type up legal documentation. But those out there that don't like me will always say, you're a hater. You're biased. Read the black and white. and listen to that nigga album acting like he goddamn Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos of the rap game. And here we have delinquent payments in the millions. How, Sway? I thought he put the man in manipulation when he paid her rent. Who's gonna pay for this? OVO subsequently defaulted under the notes by failing to make required payments when due and by breaching other obligations under the governing financing documents. On or about February 27, 2026, just months ago, ARI delivered a notice of default to OVO, identifying multiple events of default and reserving all rights and remedies available under the financing documents and at law. On or about March 20th, not on my birthday, damn, serendipity, ARI and OVO entered into a forbearance agreement pursuant to which OVO expressly acknowledged existing defaults and further acknowledged that the indebtedness and other amounts owing under the financing documents were valid, binding, and unconditionally owing without set-off, defense, counterclaim, deduction, or reduction. So literally on my birthday, they had communication and signed a forbearance agreement where OVO acknowledged that the claims in this document are legit, that they in fact do owe the money and that they have defaulted on their payments. They literally signed paperwork admitting their wrongdoing. Therefore, OVO made a partial payment while disputing its obligation to pay the make-whole fee and certain other contractual amounts. OVO's payment did not satisfy all amounts owing under the notes because substantial amounts remain due and payable, including the make-whole fee, default interest, enforcement costs, and other contractual amounts. As of June 11, 2026, after application of payments previously received, ARI claims remaining unpaid obligations of at least $4,609,455.72, including amounts owing in respect of the make-whole fee, together with default rate interest, additional legal fees and expenses, enforcement costs, ARI's contractual fees and charges, and other amounts that continue to accrue. So they say a minimum of $4.6 million is owed, including other fees. Well, with other fees. So ARI is a limited liability company incorporated under the laws of Delaware, USA. OVO is an unlimited liability company incorporated under the laws of British Columbia, which carries on business in British Columbia and other provinces. Background: OVO was founded in 2008 and operates a lifestyle, apparel, music, and consumer products brand founded by Aubrey Drake Graham, professionally known as Drake, together with Oliver L. Khatib and Noah Forty Shabib. OVO operates physical retail stores in Canada, the US, New York City, Los Angeles, Las Vegas. Remember we saw that girl that was tearing up the store? And the United Kingdom, and serves customers internationally through its e-commerce platform. Drake is OVO's majority owner. So before his Avengers come out here and try to say, man, Drake don't really got nothing to do with that, man. It's a business problem. It's his business. He's the majority owner, co-founder, and central cultural figure. Ain't he the one that rapped about a nigga he gave the OVO chain to on the album? The nigga couldn't make his payments, so he pawned the chain and sold it away. And he said, I could never forgive such a nefarious action. So what you gonna have to sell? Oh, your company. Damn! I'm sure your boys could never forgive such a nefarious action, but they gonna have to, because they gonna get a couple extra dollars in their pocket, huh? OVO generated approximately $72 million in revenue in 2024 and nearly $400 million in cumulative revenue from 2019 through 2024. And I know some people are gonna be like, damn, J Nolan, you say you're a Drake hater, but you're able to quote this nigga's lyrics. Yes, I sat on here and listened to the fucking album. Haven't gone back to it since, but I sat here and criticized every bar, which is why it's stuck in my head. Every bar that I'm mentioning was a line of critique in my fucking live review. Crazy adding. OVO generated, once again, $72 million in revenue in 2024, nearly $400 million in cumulative revenue from 2019 through 2024, not to mention Drake's own alleged $400 million deal in 2021. So how y'all can't make a $5-6 million payment? While earning these revenues, OVO suffered net losses, specifically negative EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Shout out to the Clips. Let God sort them out. Didn't they have a song called EBITDA? Crazy. Of approximately $8 million in 2024 and approximately $12 million in the aggregate during the 3-year period from 2022 through 2024. In or around Q1 2025, OVO saw external financing, including debt and equity capital, in connection with its business operations and growth initiatives. So at the top of the year last year, they started looking for some extra help. At that time, an affiliated entity, October Very Own Merchandising, was subject to an existing credit facility with Royal Bank of Canada. In connection with that RBC credit facility, Aubrey Drake Graham, Oliver El Khatib, and Noah Shabib were also OVO's principals in connection with the ARI financing relationship, personally guaranteed certain OVO merchandising obligations to RBC. On or about February 24th, 2024, Aubrey Drake Graham, Oliver El Khatib, and Noah entered into a side letter in connection with the RBC credit facilities in which they personally guaranteed a portion of the debt. So y'all was trying to get RBC to pay it off. One release condition of the guarantee obligations was evident satisfactory to RBC that there had been an equity investment of no less than $30 million in OVO merchandising and that certain facilities, totaling approximately $10 million at the time, had been repaid in full. The side letter further provided that OVO merchandising could use proceeds from the $30 million equity injection to satisfy those identified facilities. Shortly after the side letter was executed in or around March 2025, OVO contacted ARI regarding both near-term bridge capital and a contemplated $30 million equity-linked financing. OVO's investor material stated that the majority of the proceeds from the contemplated $30 million financing would be used for paid growth marketing, for which OVO had not historically spent material amounts, which makes a lot of sense because if you followed Drake's OVO brand in any capacity, you don't see like a lot of marketing. You don't see a lot of people wearing OVO shit. You know, you see a content creator here or there get sent a sweatsuit or something for glazing their life away, but you don't see a lot of just like OVO presence. You know, I've in my just travels and moving about, I've seen more people wearing like Rock Nation hats. And I'm not advocating for Rock Nation, but just in real life, I've seen more people wear Rock Nation hats than I've seen wear OVO gear. You know what I'm saying? Now, I know OVO did that deal with the NFL last year, where they were producing like clothing and stuff like that, but I haven't seen anybody wear that shit. I don't know. It's interesting, but they got $30 million to try to spend on marketing. In connection with that financing process, OVO and ARI were introduced through a mutual connection and therefore discussed potential financing transactions, including an initial senior secured loan transaction and subsequently the notes. It sounds to me like they've acquired a lot of debt with OVO. They've accepted a lot of payments. They've done a lot of partnerships, but they must not be generating a lot of profit. That's what it sounds like to me. OVO as a brand, not as a label, you know, because of course Drake produces a lot of money, but a lot of that money also is produced on behalf of lining UMG and Republic's pockets. So here we got the separate senior secured loan transaction. Before OVO issued the notes to ARI on or about May 16, 2025, ARI Senior Secured Growth Credit Fund, LP, through ARI Agent LLC, both affiliates of ARI, entered into a senior secured loan transaction with OVO's IP Holdings, an affiliate of OVO. The senior secured loan was secured by OVO intellectual property collateral, including rights relating to name, October's very own, and OVO's OWL logo. Oh, hold on. Y'all placed your intellectual property up as collateral last year. Whoa! So not only are you subject to a possible default on what you've been loaned, but you put the company's name, the OWL logo, and the ownership of the trademark up as collateral. Hey, yo, I wasn't expecting this. So he could pop if he don't pay this $4.6 million, he could lose all his rights to his own company that he's had since 2008. I could see why niggas was selling their motherfucking chain. We ain't hear about that part on the album. Shit ain't gonna be worth nothing. Damn. The senior secured, let me continue. The senior secured loan transaction provided for a $10 million facility, of which an initial tranche of $2.5 million was advanced. The senior secured loan transaction was separate from the notes, and involved different parties, different financing documents, different economic terms, different collateral, and different repayment obligations. So y'all owe quite a few niggas. Y'all owe goddamn RBC, was it? Hold on. RBC, y'all owe RBC. Y'all owe ARI. And y'all owe who? Some other niggas? Wow. Following the closing of the first tranche of the senior secured loan, OVO sought additional external capital from ARI. So y'all needed more money, more money. And its affiliates through the notes as part of OVO's contemplated $30 million equity-linked financing. Why do y'all need all this? Close them fucking shops down. Who's going in there? Burn that hard drive. Let me stop. Following the senior secured loan transaction beginning in July 2025, OVO and ARI separately entered into the note financing described herein. Around the same time as OVO's defaults under the notes, OVO Holdings defaulted under the senior secured loan transaction. So there was a separate, because they gave him another $2.5 million, under OVO Holdings. But then OVO as a whole had got like $6 million on their own. Following those defaults, OVO Holdings entered into a separate forbearance agreement with respect to the senior secured loan and paid $75,000 forbearance fee. So that's all y'all had on it, was $75 on it. Damn. On or about March 31st, 2026, OVO Holdings repaid the senior secured loan. Okay, so y'all paid that off. Good on y'all. Kudos. The repayment of the senior secured loan satisfied obligations arising under that facility only. The repayment of the senior secured loan did not satisfy, reduce, waive, compromise, or otherwise affect OVO's obligations under the promissory notes, the forbearance agreement, or any other agreements. Convertible debt agreements. On or about July 14, 2025, the parties entered into a convertible note purchase agreement. Pursuant to the purchase agreement issued and sold to ARI and ARI purchased 5 convertible promissory notes having an aggregate principal amount of $5,234,121.93 as follows. So they got the name, they got the dates and totals here. Convertible promissory note number 1, dated July 14th, 2025, in the original principal amount of $500,063.78. They came back 11 days later. Convertible promissory note number 2 in the original principal amount of $323,958.15. Came back about a week later, dated August 5th, in the original principal amount of $1,512,500. No! Same day, in the original principal amount of $2,345,320. And another one in the same day for $552,280. Pursuant to the purchase agreement and the notes collectively, ARI advanced funds to OVO, and OVO agreed to abide by the terms of the convertible debt agreements. I just want to see your man struggle with the cable bill. Material terms of the convertible debt agreements. The convertible debt agreements provide inter alia that ARI has certain conversion rights as defined and described in more detail below. OVO must pay interest on the outstanding principal at 10% per annum, the applicable rate payable quarterly in advance on the first business day of each quarter. 10% interest on the first day of each quarter throughout the year. Any overdue amount bears additional interest at 2% per annum above the applicable rate until paid. So now you get from 10% to an additional 2%. The maturity date for repayment of the notes is June 30th, 2030. Upon the occurrence of an event of default, ARI is entitled to accelerate the indebtedness and demand immediate payment of all amounts owing. If the notes are repaid or become due prior to the maturity date, including upon acceleration following an event of default, OVO is required to pay the make-whole fee. Don't you got a song called Make Them Pay? What the hell is going on? Make Them Pay on the album, but you still got to pay a make-whole fee, being an additional amount determined in accordance with the notes to provide ARI with the minimum contractual return agreed to by the parties. OVO may not prepay the notes prior to the maturity date without ARI's consent, and any permitted prepayment must include all amounts owing under the notes, including the make-whole fee, and the parties are torn to the exclusive jurisdiction of the courts of British Columbia in respect of any action or proceeding arising thereunder. The conversion rights and the make-whole fee. The notes were structured as 5-year convertible debt instruments that provide ARI with valuable contractual rights to become equity holders in OVO. In specified circumstances, including certain financing transactions and change of control transactions, ARI was entitled to convert amounts owing under the notes into equity securities of OVO rather than receive repayment in cash. The conversion rights were subject to pricing protections negotiated by the parties, including a 20% conversion discount and a valuation cap of $200 million. The conversion discount and valuation cap provided ARI with the opportunity in specified circumstances to acquire equity in OVO at a price below that available to other investors and form part of the consideration negotiated by the parties for ARI's investment in the notes. The conversion rights, the conversion discount, the valuation count, and the make-whole fee form part of a single integrated economic bargain negotiated between the parties. Repayment, acceleration, redemption, or other early termination of the notes before maturity would terminate ARI's ability to exercise the conversion rights and thereby deprive ARI of the opportunity to realize the potential value associated with those rights. The make-whole fee formed a material part of the negotiated consideration for ARI's investment in the notes and preserved ARI's bargain for economics in circumstances where the notes were repaid or otherwise terminated due to a default or otherwise before maturity, depriving ARI of the conversion rights. OVO defaults under the convertible debt agreements. OVO defaulted under the convertible debt agreements by, among other things, failing to make required quarterly interest payments when due. For example, A, interest payments that were due beginning in July and August of 2025 were not paid when due and remain unpaid beyond the applicable 3 business day grace period provided under the notes. Such amounts were not remitted until January 2nd, 2026. And interest for the first quarter of 2026, which was due on January 2nd, 2026, was likewise not paid when due and remained unpaid beyond the applicable 3 business day grace period and was not remitted until February 19th, 2026. So they making hella late payments. Each failure to pay interest within the prescribed time and applicable grace period constituted an event of default under Section 6A of the notes. Subsequent payment of certain of those amounts did not cure the consequences of the events of default or waive ARI's rights arising therefrom, including its entitlement to inter alia interest at the default rate. In addition, certain payments made by OVO were not made in accordance with the payment provisions of the notes, including payments that were remitted to an account held by an entity other than ARI. Any such payments did not comply with the notes and did not operate as a waiver or modification of the payment term. Hold on. So they paid somebody else. So they paid another party to pay you? And you trying to get extra interest for that because it wasn't outlined in your payment terms. Interesting. OVO has breached additional obligations under the convertible debt agreements, including material covenant obligations. These breaches constitute events of default under Section 6C of the notes to the extent not cured within the applicable cure periods. On or about February 27, 2026, ARI, through its counsel, delivered a written notice to OVO advising that multiple events of default had occurred under the notes, including the payment defaults described above, and reserving all rights and remedies available under the convertible debt agreements and at law, including the right to accelerate the indebtedness and demand immediate payment of all amounts owing. By reason of the foregoing events of default, ARI became entitled to accelerate and did accelerate or treat as accelerated the indebtedness under the notes, such that all outstanding principal, accrued and unpaid interest at the default rate, and all other amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements, including the make-whole fee, became immediately due and payable. Okay, so OVO was supposed to make some payments throughout last year. They ended up not paying those due payments on time. So as they were late, they accrued interest, right? So then they decided, okay, we're gonna pay y'all some money. We're gonna make a lump sum payment. ARI is saying, okay, we'll take that, but you also have not paid us the interest that's owed from those late payments, right? Not to mention the fact that you paid late, which was already a problem. So now we want to get into the convertible notes and all of this different type of stuff. Because again, at some point, they could take ownership of OVO. Remember, they put up collateral of the IP, the logo, the rights to the company. And they're saying because of your failed payments, we can accelerate the indebtedness. And now we want our money back in full. We don't trust you to pay us off in increments. So we want our money now. By reason of the foregoing events of default, ARI became entitled to accelerate and did accelerate or treat as accelerated the indebtedness under the notes, such that all outstanding principal, accrued and unpaid interest at the default rate, and all other amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements, including the make-whole fee, became immediately due and payable. OVO and ARI entered into a forbearance agreement. So this was what happened on March 20th. On or about March 20th, ARI and OVO entered into a forbearance agreement, pursuant to which ARI agreed to temporarily refrain from exercising its enforcement of rights under the convertible debt agreements conditional upon OVO's strict compliance with its terms. Remember, in March is when OVO admitted that they were, defaulting. They admitted that they were in debt. They admitted that they hadn't been keeping their end of the bargain, although they received the money. Now they didn't want to pay it back. Under the forbearance agreement, OVO, among other things, A, acknowledged and admitted the existing events of default under the convertible debt agreements as defined therein. B, confirmed that all amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements were valid, binding, and unconditionally due, and owing to ARI without set off, defense, or counterclaim. So they have documentation of OVO admitting that all of this is legitimate. It's not just allegations, it's real. C, undertook without prejudice to ARI's existing rights under the convertible debt agreements to repay the indebtedness then owing under the convertible debt agreements, including principal, the make-whole fee, accrued interest at the default rate, a forbearance fee of $150,000, USD 75,000 of which was payable upon execution, and ARI's enforcement costs, collectively the outstanding debt. And D, confirmed that the forbearance period would expire on June 1st, so they have met their deadline at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, subject to earlier termination in accordance with the forbearance agreement. So this is why this was filed. June 1st came and went. They didn't see they munyon. They say, I got something for your ass. Pursuant to the forbearance agreement, OVO agreed to pay the outstanding debt in full on or before May 1st, 2026, subject to a conditional extension to July 1st, 2026 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time if specific requirements were satisfied. OVO did not satisfy those requirements. So they could have at some point extended their deadline to July 1st, which is just about a week and a half away. Unfortunately, they did not satisfy the requirements needed to get that extension. OVO failed to pay the outstanding debt during the term of the forbearance agreement or otherwise comply with the terms of that agreement. As a result, the forbearance period terminated in accordance with its terms, and ARI became entitled to exercise all rights and remedies under the convertible debt agreements and the forbearance agreement. On or about May 25th, 2026, ARI delivered a repayment statement to OVO, setting out the amounts ARI calculated as owing under the convertible debt agreements and the forbearance agreement, including principal, the make-whole fee, accrued interest, default interest, legal fees, enforcement costs, and other contractual amounts. ARI advised OVO that payment in full required payment of all such amounts, not merely repayment of principal. Keep in mind, I don't think that OVO 50% sale is finalized. I think they're in talks of doing that. So all of this could easily be tied in to where if Authentic Brands decides to pay, they'll then have the money to pay off this company and get them out of their pocket. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But it sounds like they're at risk of losing their ownership of this company. And if they lose their ownership of this company before the deal is dry, that would be crazy. OVO makes partial payments that do not satisfy the outstanding debt. On or about May 27, 2026, ARI received a wire payment in the aggregate amount of USD $3,824,768.54 from ADG Sound Inc. Management account. ADG Sound Inc. Management. The wire details identified the payment reference as OVO notes. So this is so remember, just a couple sections ago, they said that the money came from someone else that they didn't agree to. AR received and retained those funds solely as a partial payment on account and under a full reservation of rights, and did not accept them as full payment or satisfaction of all amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements. ARI expressly demanded payment in full of all amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements, including without limitation the make whole fee, accrued and unpaid interest, interest at the default rate, legal costs, disbursements, and other enforcement related expenses, costs, and all other amounts payable thereunder. OVO took the position that it owes no make whole fee at all, and its partial payment satisfied its debt in full. Huh? Here's $3 million out of what we owe you. Get the fuck out our face, please. They say, no, I won't. As a matter of fact, I'll be in your face even more for the foreseeable future. While disputing its obligation to pay additional amounts due and owing. On or about May 29, 2026, ARI advised OVO that payment in full required payment of all amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements, including the make whole fee, accrued interest at the default rate, and enforcement costs. After defaulting under the convertible debt agreements and obtaining ARI's forbearance, OVO has attempted to avoid its full contractual payment obligations. It is so crazy to hear all these bars on this nigga's album backfiring in real time. Despite demand, OVO continues to refuse to pay the full amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements, which include, among other things, the make whole fee, ARI's legal costs and disbursements in pursuing enforcement, and C, all amounts of interest at the default rate owing under the convertible debt agreements. ARI pleads and relies upon the forbearance agreement as OVO's acknowledgement of the indebtedness, waiver of defenses, estoppel, and the subsequent events following default. Remember, OVO signed that forbearance agreement admitting to all of their debts to ARI. So now they're going to say, hey, we got the proof that y'all entered this agreement with us. So now we're going to take this to court. The forbearance agreement did not extinguish or replace OVO's obligations under the convertible debt agreements, which remain in full force and effect, except as expressly amended. Make whole fee. The make whole fee is the contractual amount required to provide ARI with the agreed minimum return if the notes are repaid, become due, or are otherwise taken out before ARI receives the benefit of the 5-year investment period and the equity-linked rights attached to the notes. The notes define the make whole fee as follows. Make whole fee means such additional amount as is necessary to cause the internal rate of return to the holder with respect to the note as determined by holder using the XIRR function of Microsoft Excel on an aggregate basis to be equal to at least 15%. Okay, so they need at least 15% of the total as a make whole fee. The notes were structured and priced based on an expected 5-year investment term. The make whole fee is calculated by determining the additional amount required to cause ARI's internal rate of return on the notes on an aggregate basis over the 5-year term to at least 15% annually. Okay, so that makes it even bigger. Okay, it's not just 15%, but 15% per year. It is calculated using the XIRR function on Microsoft Excel in accordance with the definition contained in the notes and based upon the date of each note and the contractual maturity date. Calculated in accordance with the notes, the make whole fee is $4 million. $158,001.06. The original principal investment under the notes was $5,234,121.93. Accordingly, the sum of the principal and make whole fee is $9,392,000. $122.99. Not they gave it a 99-cent like the store. So they say all fees, all make whole fee, everything put together is almost $9.4 million we intend to see. Damn. Amounts remaining owing. OVO has not paid all amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements. As of June 11th, the total amount remaining due and owing pursuant to the convertible debt agreements, including without limitation, the outstanding make whole fee, default interest, legal fees, professional fees, enforcement costs, lender expenses, and other recoverable amounts, is $4,609,455.72. The amounts owing to ARI continue to accrue. Damn. Damn. And of course, it continues to accrue based on non-repayment and interest. Part 2, relief sought. ARI claims the following relief against OVO. So they're seeking a judgment in the amount of the total I just said, that 4.6 million, calculated as of June 11th, or such greater or other amount as may be proven for amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements. They're requesting payment of all further amounts that have accrued or continue to accrue under the convertible debt agreements, including default interest, legal fees and expenses, professional fees, enforcement costs, lender expenses, contractual fees and charges, and other amounts payable thereunder. In the alternative, damages for breach of contract in the amount of the total that we just said, 4.6 million, or such greater or other amount as may be proven. So they say, hey, we either want a judgment in full, we want payment plus interest and fees, we want damages for breach of contract in the same amount. A declaration that the make whole fee provision in the notes are valid and enforceable, and that OVO is obligated to pay the make whole fee to ARI as part of the amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements, which is another $4 million. Prejudgment interest on the amounts found owing in accordance with the contractual rate set out in the convertible debt agreements, and in the alternative pursuant to the Court Order Interest Act. They want post-judgment interest on the amounts found owing in accordance with the contractual rate set out in the convertible debt agreements, and in the alternative pursuant to the Court Order Interest Act. They want costs of the proceeding, including contractual legal fees, professional fees, enforcement costs, and expenses to the extent recoverable under the convertible debt agreements or applicable law. They want damn near $15-20 million. Legal base. Breach of contract. The convertible debt agreements are valid and enforceable agreements between ARI and OVO. OVO breached the convertible debt agreements by inter alia by A, failing to make required payments when due, B, failing to pay all amounts owing following events of default and acceleration, C, failing to make the make whole fee, D, failing to pay default interest, legal fees and expenses, professional fees, enforcement costs, lender expenses, contractual fees and charges, and other amounts payable thereunder, and E, failing to provide required financial reporting and information. As a result of OVO's breaches, ARI is entitled to judgment for all amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements together with interest and costs. Acknowledgement of indebtedness waiver of defenses. So remember, the forbearance agreement where OVO signed and acknowledged and confirmed all of their debts to ARI. So they say, hey, they've admitted to this shit. We just want it to be enforced by law. Damn. They basically repeated all of that same shit over again, so I skipped a little bit ahead. So we get to damages here. They say, as a result of OVO's breaches of the convertible debt agreements, ARI has suffered loss and damage. As of June 11, 2026, after application of payments previously received, ARI calculated remaining unpaid obligations of $4.6 million, like we said before. The amounts owing to ARI continue to accrue because of interest and non-repayment. ARI is entitled to recover all amounts owing under the convertible debt agreements, including the make whole fee, default interest, legal fees and expenses, professional fees, enforcement costs, lender expenses, contractual fees and charges, prejudgment interest, post-judgment interest, costs of this proceeding, and such further amounts as may be proven. And remember, with the make whole fee included, they want over $9 million, not including interest, not including legal fees and charges. Application of payments pursuant to Section 4.7 of the forbearance agreement, which amends the application of payments provision under the convertible debt agreements. All amounts received by ARI may be applied in ARI's sole and absolute discretion, including to enforcement-related amounts, legal costs and expenses, accrued and unpaid interest, including at the default rate and principal, and other obligations of OVO. OVO's payment of USD $3,824,768.54 on or about May 27th did not, as a matter of contract, extinguish or satisfy all amounts then owing. But they did pay a sizable portion. I'll give them that. ARI has demanded payment of the outstanding debt from OVO, but OVO has failed or refused to pay all amounts owing. In accordance with Section 4.7 of the forbearance agreement, ARI was entitled to apply that payment in its sole and absolute discretion and irrespective of any contrary instruction or position asserted by OVO. Accordingly, OVO's payment did not constitute repayment in full of the outstanding debt. ARI expressly advised OVO that any payments received would be applied in its sole and absolute discretion and would not constitute repayment in full absent payment of all amounts owing. Okay. This sounds like something that's probably going to get settled out of court. I don't think they're going to pursue this to the furthest extent. They got paid $3.4 million. They say they owed $4.6 million. They want to tag another damn near $4 million or something like that on there. They want $9 million in total. I don't know if they're going to get that whole 9. But it's going to be very interesting to see how this progresses. Drake, you better go in your motherfucking house and play Give Me a Hug. Nigga, I know you want a hug right about now, nigga. God damn. They on your arse, boy. And y'all put y'all motherfucking IP, intellectual property, name, and logo up as collateral in case of defaulting on your payments. Wowzers. But you out here talking about everybody else money, calling niggas brokies. That's why they be shacking up. All this stuff. And you are at risk of losing your pride and joy. The company that you built on your own away from Cash Money, Young Money. Over some fucking small ass potatoes of a $5 million $6 million investment. When you supposed to be up like that. Say it ain't so, nigga. It's crazy. So yeah, if Authentic Brands Group does actually end up buying OVO, I'm pretty sure they would be able to put up sufficient cash that would pay off this debt to ARI and they would be able to maintain business as usual while retaining their 50% ownership of OVO. So we'll just have to see what's going on, but it's not a good look nonetheless. Even if you do have talks of selling your company, I'm sure the company that's interested in buying your company, you know what I'm saying, definitely wants to know what the hell is going on. Because why would we give you all this money when y'all been making all this money, but y'all can't pay off your investors? How is our partnership going to continue to flourish if you motherfuckers ain't handling your business right? It's going to make people rethink some things. I don't know. Let me know what y'all think of all this down below in the comments. Be sure to like and share this video. If this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, become an insider. It's so crazy, man, because I literally, sometimes I skip over Drake's stories just out of like not wanting to talk about this nigga. I couldn't avoid this one. I mean, damn. I'll catch y'all later though. Peace.
Yeah, family over fame in this bitch, yeah. The glory of living righteous is setting in. My street knowledge and education's a perfect blend. Young mogul, independent, I've been setting trends. The first one from my family to be faithfully wed. Fuck niggas and the horses that they riding on. I see this shit from all angles like a polygon. I'll never politic and the drama be piling on. Father and great son acknowledged like I'm Bobby Bonds. Conversation with my lady about the paper route. 5 sit bank accounts every day I make it count. They down talking my commentary for hating now. Well, I can take it cause I'm bodying your favorite now, please. I can do this shit in my sleep. I been writing for these niggas, y'all read it and weep. I been fighting these niggas if you speak on the street. I'll turn your birthday party into New Year's Eve. Don't let me take it there. We ain't playing fair. This the ATL, Southside nigga moving furniture like Wayfair. Life on hold, no insurance for your healthcare. Lifeline gone, so you wanna be a millionaire? Well, let me tell you about this world I built. The women I dodged, the niggas that I read for filth. The sympathy card